I've got a announcement. I always try to bring y'all good news, but got an announcement to make this morning. A special appointment. Our new city solicitor is going to be coming on board soon, and that person is the Honorable Andre Maurice Davis. He is a senior circuit court judge of the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit Court. Some of you know Judge Davis. He brings a wealth of legal knowledge and experience to his new position, and Baltimore is really fortunate to retain such counsel. He has a great track record. As you all know, he has distinguished himself throughout his career. Believe it or not, he began with the Baltimore City Public Schools growing up in East Baltimore and continued through stops at Phillip Academy, Andover, and the University of Pennsylvania, and the University of Maryland School of Law. As a Baltimore native and former Baltimore City Circuit Court judge, he is certainly familiar with the city. Let me just say he also worked as an assistant housing manager and equal opportunity specialist with the Housing Authority of Baltimore City, and that was for about 3 years. So we welcome him back to city government, but he won't actually start until September the 1st. And until then, acting solicitor David Ralph will continue in that role, and he will stay in that office, never leaving forever, as Judge Davis's deputy. I told him I've gotten so used to sitting beside him at the Board of Estimates, and I respect his great counsel and his role with this department, and look forward to his continued service and great service that he's provided to city government. I don't think we would have been able to get through, in fact, I know we wouldn't have been able to get through the consent decree without the great counsel and participation of David Ralph. And so, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And look forward to continuing to work with you. Any questions? You know, I just want somebody to know, I put my hand up like this and I immediately put them down because I saw a picture with me like this. I'm like, okay.
I think I can get that. So.
Yeah.
Judge Davis is the current bench.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Isn't he a retired federal judge? Is that right?
No, he's in senior status.
Okay. Well, that's a big hire. Judge Davis is a very, respected person, very accomplished. What was the conversation like to bring him on board?
He's eager. he's eager, and I'm going to let him tell his story when he comes because he'll share conversations that we've had, and I'm excited.
Huge for the city. It's huge for the city.
Yeah.
This appointment brings a prestige to the city that harkens back to the days of Simon Soboleff, and we're all fortunate to have someone accomplished jurist like that here, and that just speaks volumes to the mayor's leadership and ability to attract good people.
So, kind of forecasting next several months, Mr. Ralph.
You're a forecaster? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, one of them.
Just your duties as you prepare to make way for him and what you'll be taking on as a deputy, or you were deputy before once, right?
I have continued to be both the city solicitor and the deputy. So no, my duties don't change. As you know, the deputy does the same things the city solicitor does in a more supportive role. I've of course changed that around in the past several months to make sure that I'm available to the mayor on a more primary basis. But no, my role won't change.
You could just speak a little louder.
I'm sure.
Go ahead.
So yes, as I said, my role won't change. It'll be the same as it's been before, working for the citizens of Baltimore.
Mayor, the BDC the board of the BDC has not met for 2 months now, 2.5 months, and there's no meeting scheduled for this month either. And I know that the transition report suggested that they reload the board and refocus the mission. And so I wanted to ask you today, what is going on with the BDC?
So I've met with Mr. Cole, and we have chosen, there were, I think, one of the boards that people most applied for, of the 1,000 and some odd people who answered the 700 positions, that's what happens when you put stuff online, open city government, over 1,000 people applied for the various board positions. And, you know, we do background checks, we thoroughly vet them. I think we have, in my last meeting with Bill Cole, about 7 new board members that we're appointing. And so we're going through their backgrounds and making sure that they will be a good fit for the Baltimore Development Corporation. You know, we are doing some rearranging, especially in terms of small business and so forth, and really trying to clarify based on our transition reports, a focusing of the BDC and their role in economic development. They're the economic arm for the city. But as you also know or may not know, 95% of their budget comes from housing and community development.
So are you following the transition report regarding the recommendations, or how close are you following?
No, I'm not following them line item by line item. You know, I look at transition reports. I mean, we got reports from OSI, you know, a bunch of suggestions from groups and organizations around the city, especially around economic development, how we should reshape, reorganize. And so I'm looking at all of them, but certainly won't follow it word by word or line by line.
So when will we hear about, or when will be publicly announced about the changes at BDC?
As soon as we get the board completely aligned, and haven't had a
So
conversation.
those are your appointments, correct?
Yes. Well, yeah.
Expanding the board was one
Yeah.
of the big suggestions. Are you following that?
I am looking at expanding it a little. I don't like real cumbersome boards. That's personal. But I've sat on boards that are very productive, that are large. Like, you know, I sat on the University of Maryland Medical Systems Board. That's like 33 people, and it works because you divide, you know, the areas up: Finance Committee, Minority Business Enterprise Committee, and it works. It worked for them. And then I've sat on some boards that have been smaller, that are easier to maneuver. So I think it'll pretty much stay a mid to a larger size board.
But you want to have it moved into that community service from, as suggested by the transition, that was its main point, it seemed like.
To focus on some,
Small businesses, et cetera.
in fact, what you'll see, and we should probably be announcing that in the next couple of weeks, is moving the small business person to a cabinet position in the mayor's office to sit on the board of the BDC. We're trying to look at that small business center, should it be relocated somewhere in the neighborhood, more central? What are we doing with main streets? Again, all of that funding is coming out of HCD, and so.
Transparency has been a really big issue there with the open meetings.
I've heard you.
Closed meetings. How are you planning to tackle that question?
I think they need to be a little more open. I think they need to be a little more transparent, especially when you're talking about creating tax incentive financing for companies and so forth. And as you well know, what I'm looking at is how to move some of the development in communities and neighborhoods. And we are required as city government to be transparent. And when I say that, you know, I'm looking at Pimlico Racetrack, for example, and what needs to take place in that part of the community. Should we be looking at a TIF area in that particular community? I mean, we have not begun those kinds of discussions, but what I've said is, even with the slots impact money, that it's going to focus on that Park Heights corridor. Everything we do has to be publicly and transparent, and I would expect that they would be a little more transparent as well, especially when you serve as the economic arm for the city.
Madam Mayor, speaking of transparency, Anthony just said the law department is advising not to release the names of the vendors doing the testing for the red light and
Did you say that, Anthony?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Why is that? Why don't you?
Let me ask the law department, because I'll give you everything that you need to know. Anything I know, you all can know.
What are the two vendors?
They didn't tell me. I don't know. I don't know who they are.
Okay.
So it's been the long-standing policy that when we get in vendors like that, we don't release their names until after contracts are signed, until we're completed with that process. That's been the long-standing process at the city.
When the police department was rolling out body cameras, I believe they announced the 3 vendors they were testing cameras with, so why couldn't the same thing happen here?
Okay, so That was a pilot program, and that was run a little differently. But the initial process, you didn't get all the names of all the vendors until we came down to the ones that we were actually going to run a pilot program with for several months. So it made sense you were going to see these cameras out on the street to make it, to disclose that information in that
So,
instance.
Mr. Ralph, typically when bids are submitted, we'll see the 6 names or whatever that come in with their prices and their proposals, and you need to go down to the controller's office and look through the proposals. And when the last peak camera contract came, we saw that it was Xerox and Breckford and Redflex, and they were the finalists. Why is this process different?
Again, like I said, it's been the process in this instance to how they're doing it in this case. First, to do a technical review that we don't disclose it in that instance. Certainly, we will disclose that information. It's not a secret process, but for proprietary reasons, that information is not being disclosed currently, but it will be.
Considering the history of the cameras, the audit that said there was a 10% failure rate, why not put out the names of the vendors right now to convince people that the process is being done correctly?
Like I said, I can assure you that what we want to do is make sure that the process is done correctly. And to do that, you need to let the technical people look at these technical proposals, and then once they've looked at that, and that information will be disclosed, everybody will have all the information that's out there. But right now, they haven't gotten to a point where they're going to do any best and final offers. There may be some other continuing negotiations that would cause some proprietary concerns disclosing that information now.
I'd like to say with all due respect, I really ask you to release those names and their proposals today, because I don't think that proprietary is, in the past, it's not what has been done. It's going to have a huge impact on the city.
No, that's not how it's going to, yeah, that's not, Melanie, let me just be real clear.
We're going to release the information.
First of all, the information will be released.
Right, it's not.
And in the first 30 days of those cameras being on the streets, it'll be a test as well. Nobody will be getting tickets.
That's right.
You know, it'll be a test. So we will make sure that if I knew them, I'd shout it out to you. I don't have those
And
names.
I don't know them either.
And so we don't have them. But when we get them, you will get them. And before they go to the Board of Estimates, you will know who they are.
Thank you. 'Cause
Okay.
it's high
Okay.
down.
Look, Melanie,
We understand that, and
gotcha. We got you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Next question.
So I want to ask about, you had a meeting with Build last week, or this past week, correct?
Who?
Build, B-U-I-L-D, the
What does that
nonprofit.
stand for?
Baltimore United Leadership and Development.
Yes.
How does that?
Okay, I mean, I've met with them a couple times, so go ahead.
So you said to them this past week that you raised $3 million for after school, that you went to companies like the Weinberg, or not companies, organizations like the Weinberg Foundation, and it seems that the $3 million are going actually towards summer learning collaborative, so that is summer programming rather than after school programming.
So what I said to Bill was that $3 million was raised privately. Weinberg was among those. 92 organizations around the city got funded. What I said to Bill was that we don't have any more money for their particular initiatives that they want. And what I've said to Bill is that we've put something like over $500 million in schools and after-school programs and so forth, and that there's $12 million in the youth fund that they're working on now, which is 3% of the city's budget. That's what I said to Bill.
So, I mean, with clarifying, have you identified money for after school, for specifically Family League's after school budget?
No,
Okay. And do you intend to do so at any point?
we give $6 million to the Family League, $10 million a year. That's what the Family League will get from the city this year.
But going.
So they make their choices in terms of how they spend their money. That's not my choice.
But this money that you've said that you have given to the Summer Learning Collaborative, you said you gave it.
No, I didn't say I gave anything. I said the private sector, the philanthropic community, raised $3 million, distributed to 92 different organizations throughout the city for summer programs, summer learning programs this summer. because the city does not have it.
So then there wasn't would you say there was a misunderstanding between, you know, if,
I don't have a misunderstanding. I'm very clear about what I said. Good. Next.
Madam Mayor, speaking of new hirings, have you made any more progress on searching for a housing commissioner? Or those two?
Very close, very close. In fact, I think we're in interviews today. We're very close on HCD. We are making offers in the next week to a transportation person and to a Parks and Recreation person. And so next week I should be able to, hopefully, I hate to throw out a date because you all will be standing here, bring me those people. So I would tell you in the next 2 weeks, we'll be ushering those folks in front of you as well.
So structurally, you said before you went to separate housing and the community development piece. How far is that moving along as far as changing whatever?
Anybody have a pair of scissors? Housing, piece of paper here. Two, separate. HABC and HCD. They will be two separate agencies. And I ask you, if that is concerning to you, look at DC, look at Philadelphia, look at Boston, look at New York. All of those cities, those two agencies are separate. We need to concentrate on what we do with our Section 8 programs and how do we make our Section 8 projects better than they are today. You know, we've got some Section 8 projects where we didn't even build playgrounds near them. And housing and community development, and as we pointed out just earlier, 95% of our Baltimore Development Corporation money goes into housing and community development. There has to be a focus, and all you got to do is drive down Park Heights, Drew Hill Avenue, Broadway. I mean, there's still, go across North Avenue from one end to the other. There are neighborhoods who are demanding and need development, and that focus has to be there. The separation, I believe, will allow us those kinds of focuses.
Maybe I should rephrase the question just a tad. Is it just the case of just hiring two commissioners, or do you have to do something to the either the charter or the law to? Okay.
Madam Mayor, the state's attorney's office put out a memo last week expressing concern that with increased federal enforcement of immigration laws, that people might be less willing to report information about crimes. What concern do you have that with increased federal enforcement on immigration laws, that immigrants in the city may be less willing to go to police, go to the state's attorney, and give information about crime that's happening in the city?
Well, I can tell you from my working with the DEA, which I had conversation with on yesterday, the ATF, I got to get these acronyms right, you all, because ATF, DEA, NBC, ABC, CBS, anyway, NPR, okay.
BAL.
BA, I'm sorry, did I leave out BA? Fox. Well, let me just say, yesterday you all saw ATF in the vehicle. We think that's going to make a difference for us. Following that meeting, I met with DEA, and their focus is going to be on the violent crime problem in our city. And I think you're going to hear more announcements down the road in terms of them bringing in more agents to focus on the criminal activity, the drug activity in our city. When I sat down yesterday, they talked about the drugs that are coming in from Mexico. I mean, the illegal drug trafficking that's going on in our city is out of control. So federal assistance is coming in to focus on that. I don't see that, not have heard that, and had not had any conversations around targeting immigrants in this city. We have said we're a welcoming city, we'll continue to be so. That is not their focus. Our focus has to be on reducing the gun violence, and their focus is going to be on gun violence in our city. It's like a voice from nowhere. Go ahead. Oh, is that you? Okay.
If you have a follow-up.
Yeah, so there's no concern that ICE immigration enforcement is impacting witnesses?
No. And if I hear that, I'll share that with you, but I've not heard that.
Mayor, with over 800 fatal overdoses
Wow.
last year, and many more than the homicide number, more than double. what do you think of the police department's plan to start using those overdoses and working backwards to try to, I guess, get to the dealers and the violence?
Well, that's where the DEA is also coming in. That was my conversation. I think I saw in the news this morning, it says 600. It's actually over 800 folks who died in our city just on drug overdoses. And that's their concern as well. You know, just too much drug trafficking, illegal drugs in our city are out of control.
Mayor, the emphasis on enforcement, which has been a policy for the last 35 years that has been roundly and in a bipartisan way criticized as a failure, the war on drugs, is where do you, how do you
draw the line?
forward? How do you do that without returning to the same failed policy?
Yeah. So one of the things we talked about yesterday was not the low-level folks who are on the street, but tracking those drugs from which they come, because we've got to cut off the supply coming into the city. And I think that the DEA can do a better job of tracking that for us. But when we talk about drug overdose, and I think that's part of what we are trying to integrate into our policing strategy, is, you know, helping folks. You know, we are going to be opening up a stabilization center. We are going to be moving people towards treatment. And we are using whatever that drug is to try to keep people from overdosing. Narcan. And so police are trained in that effort. So we want to try to keep people from dying. And I think that's our strategy, not arresting people, not incarcerating people, leading people who we can towards, you know, our stabilization center that we hope to be up soon, and making sure we can get people into treatment.
And then, Mayor, what's going on with the Office of Criminal Justice?
Reorganization.
Reorganization?
Yes.
What's your vision for that office, and who do you hope will lead it?
Well, you know, one of the things I said very early was that we were going to be looking at how do we utilize some of our dollars inside of criminal justice. What you should know is that many of the positions in criminal justice are grant funded. They're federally funded positions. In fact, we had one young lady who left in April, who I think left because of her grant ran out. No, that was Laurie, who left in February because her grant ran out. And a number of those positions are grant funded. But, you know, we've got to make room for what criminal justice is going to look like in our city, policing is going to look like in our city, where those positions, you know, as I pointed out earlier, it's about $11 million that we're going to be adding to the city's budget. So we're trying to find some cost savings without impacting the roles of those agencies. So we're restructuring, looking at some additional individuals and how do we shift some positions over there that they become full-time positions and not just grant-funded positions.
Have you heard from the special agent and the FBI in terms of your requests to them?
Well, federal assistance, of course, is here. I'm talking with, just finished my discussion with ATF, DEA, and I'm supposed to be having a conversation with them further. But the federal assistance is here in the city. Everybody is trying to cooperate because, you know, nobody wants to see the crime statistics continue to rise in our city. And so I'm going to be working with all of them.
But have you gotten any response that you mentioned last week from the FBI special agent to your request? Has that come in yet?
So I asked for federal help. I said FBI, ATF. Yeah, but it was
last week it was FBI.
Yeah, FBI. It should have been ATF. Should have been ATF. So ATF did answer. DEA.
ATF was it?
Yeah, ATF and DEA. No, I said FBI because I'm talking to all of them.
So did you mean last week FBI in addition, or did you?
Yeah, FBI in addition to ATF and DEA.
And have they ever responded to your request for help that you were talking about last week?
There are, and I don't want to finish their discussion because we are looking at additional agents, how do you call it, federal folks coming into the city. And I don't have those numbers as of yet. And it's not FBI, it's DEA agents and ATF agents. We're also, and I don't want to announce what we're going to be doing in the future, but there'll be some more things that will happen as a result of that.
So, Madam Mayor, just going back to the question about immigration, even though the Trump administration has talked about greater immigration enforcement, there's no concern on your part that that's going to happen in Baltimore, have an impact?
No, because we're not passing those kind of laws. We're just not. We're focused on, our biggest problem is not around immigration. Our biggest problem is around drug trafficking and guns in our city. Melanie, did you have something?
I wondered about your chief of staff. Is there any movement on that, replacing a new appointment?
No, no. You all are watching me. You know how long it takes to get a housing commissioner. And I tell folks, you know, I'm a hands-on mayor, and all of our folks had jurisdictions over certain particular areas. Nobody was responsible for all of the staff of the mayor or all of the agency heads. My goal is to hire people who know how to do their jobs in their agencies. And even my folks who are in-house, I tell them they don't get to run agencies. The agencies are, the people who I put in charge are people who I feel have the capacity and capabilities to run their agencies. What I want my folks on the inside to do is to enhance their abilities to do their jobs. Thank you. Yeah.
The DEA, in particular, and the ATF, have been operating in Baltimore for years in one way, shape, or form. So why do you think, I mean, I don't want to ask this question in a critical
Go
way
ahead.
with them,
That's fine.
but I'm just trying to gauge
Why?
why are we doing it now? What's different about now?
I think the numbers are different now. When you think about the staggering gun violence in our city, I mean, we just have too many guns on our streets. I tell people, nobody's hand-fist fighting today. People pulling out guns and shooting each other. I had heard that there were 600 guns actually stolen out of a locker, and they're on the streets of our city. We've got to get these guns off the streets of our city. But, you know, when I look at this whole issue around gun violence, it's not just, you know, can we get the guns out of people's hands? It's what are the conversations and interventions that need to take place to de-escalate violence? I mean, what makes you think that you love someone so much that you got to kill them? You know, what makes you go out on the street because we're fighting over turf, you know, or you on my corner, that you should shoot me? I spent Saturday moving around the city, helping to clean the city up. But I want you to know I spent an hour and a half at least on the corner of Pennsylvania Avenue, across from the market. And when I got out of my truck and looked at some of the trash that was on the street, I was like, really? And, you know, the guys and women came from everywhere. I literally stood there for an hour and a half listening to the stories and trying to figure out, what do we do about this problem? I met an 18-year-old from Glen Burnie, a high school graduate, who said, I said, well, why are you here? He said, well, I graduated from high school, but community college was too hard. Well, what are you going to get on this corner? And even my EPU said there was a guy that was standing there, and they said, you know, we were like, if he moves towards her, you know, we might have to do something, because he had a hoodie on. He said, but as soon as you started talking to him, he pulled his hood back, started smiling, and said, man, I just want to work. And I can tell you, of the 20 or 30 people that I talked to on Saturday, the biggest response was, can I get a job? Can you pass a drug test? One woman said to me, Jane, she said, hey, man, Mayor, don't you recognize me? And I'm like, no. She said, well, you know, I'm a heroin addict. I said, well, maybe that's why. Look what it does to you. I'm sure you look at least 10 or 15 years older than what you really are. But can we help you get into treatment? Between treatment and job needs in this city. And last night I spent 2 hours talking with a group of business folks who, you know, they said they wanted to have dinner with me because they wanted to offer solutions. And I said, you know, okay, I'm listening. I don't run, because all of us around schools. I said, well, I don't run the school system. And they said, but what are you going to do? And somebody asked me, how could I, you know, said the schools were still weren't segregated enough, and that's a problem. I said, well, help me understand how y'all going to spread less than 30% of the population across the other 70%. I said, because the question should not be whether the schools are integrated or not. The question ought to be, why aren't we graduating children like we're graduating from City College, who are all 99% all going to Harvard, Yale, or wherever the college and university? It's about the equalization of opportunity across the board. And I said, and I'm sure that none of you all want a drug treatment center sitting out in front of your door, but guess what? Nobody does. So the question becomes, where are you going to put it? And how are you going to make it in such a way that it doesn't impact neighborhoods in such a negative way? And so somebody says, "So, well, what's the answer?" I said, by this time I'm like, I'm really done. I'm sorry, I wasn't done, y'all. Those over there, I was, I said, well, let me give you a suggestion. It's got to be, drug treatment has to be connected to hospitals. And it has to be connected to hospitals that aren't bumped up against people's neighborhoods. An example, St. Agnes Hospital. Cardinal Gibbons, I believe it was, high school, that left that area, sold a portion of their property to St. Agnes. But there's buildings left over there, and they're getting ready to leave the schools over there. That's a perfect area to create drug treatment, job training, mental health services, build a place for people to live because they need to go behind a door that they can shut, take a shower, take a bath, get up and begin to think about the next day. That's a real solution. So where's the money to do it? And if you were so philanthropic, let's put together the money to go about the business of doing it. The end of Johns Hopkins, where Bayview is another area. The end of Harbor Hospital, another area where we could partner with Anne Arundel County. We got to get real about the solutions. I mean, that's what I deal with every day. Those are the kinds of things that I think about every day. Solutions to the problems that the city faces. So,
Who are the business people you were meeting with?
oh, they don't want me to tell you that. Peace and love, Melanie. Thank you all.